Now we are on the broadcast.
How am I
Thank you,
supposed to
friends and followers. Never mind the spat between the two children over there. The man's here to do the talking.
That's right.
This is Jake for the Overtime MMA broadcast for whatever fucking week we're in. That's Brian.
Right.
Brian, say hello. There you go. So we just had a pretty terrific podcast, and there were a couple things that we touched on that we wanted to retouch on.
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about with regard to the broadcasting of the show, Thiago Santos, the guy who beat the shit out of Nate Marquardt.
Right.
I like the ambition. I like that he's going out and saying, these are fights I want. These are fights that my fans want. But did you even think to look at the rankings, bruh?
Right.
Until today, he wasn't even ranked in the UFC middleweight division. He called out number 4, number 6, and number 11. Maybe you can get number 11. But the fact is you just entered the top 15. You're going to call out Michael Bisping. What the actual flying, flipping, flatulent, phallic fuck are you talking about?
You know what? I feel like it's Thiago Santos. He's pumped about the fight, and I mean, there's one thing in trying to oversell yourself. He might have stepped over that line, but at the same time, I mean, I give props to him. I mean, go out there and be overzealous and try and reach the unattainable. You're showing that. You're showing like that you want it. You're not like waiting for people to say, okay, well, let me throw you this or let me throw you that. You're saying, hey, Kendrick, can you turn that down, please? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a lot like negotiation, right? He asks for 4 and 6, but then he weasels an 11 in there. So it's like, well, I'm certainly not going to give you 4 and 6, but I'll meet you halfway and give you 11. You think that's kind of the way he's going? Or you think he's just like, oh my God, I'm so excited right now. Just let me say everything, and I want to fight everybody, and I'm the man. Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel like it's a little of both. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know. He's like picking it. It almost seems too precise in the people that he's choosing. He's throwing out there, but at the same time, it could also just be like, I'm so excited with what's going on. I'm just going to throw out these random names that are in my division that would propel my status. So, I don't know.
That's a fair point. I think it's interesting. Now, as far as people who have kind of jumped the line, there haven't been too many. Guys like Conor McGregor didn't even get to do that. Like, it's not like he fought once and then fought for a title.
Right.
It's kind of hard to think about guys who went and had that astronomical shoot up. And plus, I mean, just the jump in competition. I mean, more often than not, it ends up backfiring on a guy. How do you think a guy, based on what you saw with him against Nate Marquardt, how do you think he would fare against Michael Bisping?
I don't know. It's hard to measure how somebody would do against a better striker like Bisping when they went up against Marquardt. You know what I mean? Like it's really like you're very limited on what you're measuring. Because, I mean, it's Marquardt, you know what I mean? Like, how can you say, okay, well, I did this against Marquardt, so therefore I should be able to do this against Bisping? That makes no sense in any discussion whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that Bisping and Marquardt are kind of a far cry away from each other at this point. I mean, I think there was a time in their careers where they were comparable, but...
Right. But there's like a fucking 6 or 7 year difference between the two.
I would agree. But, I mean, just like the things that he was doing, the way he was able to maintain himself, I don't think that he has the patience for a guy like Bisping. I think that Bisping's a guy who will just...
See, Bisping's not the type of guy that's going to go into the fight and fight the way you want to fight.
Yeah, when I think of Bisping and the way that he fights, I think of angling or fishing for the common folk. One thing that my dad always taught me when I was a kid, before I was a sissy vegan and I would actually go fishing, was the way you set a hook, right? Now, forgive me if I'm going over your head, but the whole point is you can create tension and know that you got it before you set the hook. So let's say I'm leaning to the left, the fish is right. I can feel that drag, and then I set the hook. That's kind of something that Bisping's pretty damn good at doing, where he builds that tension, he maintains that tension. So even if he's not putting his foot on the throttle and he's not doing something aggressive, He's still maintaining and keeping you where he wants you before he does it, in a way that, your typical, run-of-the-mill top 15, 10 to 15 little guy's not going to do.
They're going to feel that little tug, and they're going to fucking yank the shit out of the line, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And I think that these are the kind of, you see the younger guys are the ones who fall into those traps better than anybody. And I think that's one of the reasons why we as fans are okay with guys who are gatekeepers, not saying Michael Bisping is one, but there's it's a familiar name. It's against a kid. And there are some times where you can look spectacular. Based on what I saw, ain't nothing going to convince me that he could beat Robert Whitaker, because Robert Whitaker is my boyfriend from the Southern Hemisphere. But Derek Brunson, I think that'd be a really fun fight. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And what better way to vault himself, right? Like I said, he fought Nate Marquardt, who wasn't ranked. And then he suddenly finds himself ranked. And it's not astronomical to call out Derek Brunson at this point. But if a week ago he would have done that, we'd be like, who the fuck? Why is a ranked Derek Brunson going to fight you?
Exactly. But that, therein lies the usefulness of Nate Marquardt.
Exactly. And the fact is, he has a name. Even being 2-6 in his last 8, I could very legitimately see him getting another shot in the UFC. I'm not even shocked at that idea. He's a guy who can make your next star off of. And then also, in making your next star off of Nate Marquardt, you're making him less marketable to companies like Bellator. Because if he's going into Bellator, fucking 2-7 in his last 9, 2-8 in his last 10. I mean, that shows you where, okay, he's a cast-off. And if he does well in Bellator, it helps the UFC, because they can be like, yeah, look at this schlub who couldn't handle it. He's crushing you. And if he loses, it's no loss because they've already cut ties with the guy. Yeah,
it's definitely a win-win on the UFC's point of view. And, it's not something that I feel like is too far-fetched for Marquardt here in the future. And it's sad to say it, but it seems like I don't know if it's going to be a trend. It's probably already a trend with, gatekeepers of the UFC going over to Bellator. You know what I mean?
Look at Rampage. Yes, Rampage was a former UFC light heavyweight champion, but he by far and large, had become a gatekeeper.
I was going to say, that's a very big but,
Yeah, Rampage has a booty, a very big booty. But in that vein of kind of shit-talking and angling and kind of picking your next step beyond the fight that you're at, Amanda Nunes came out this week and was saying that, Ronda Rousey should stay retired. If she doesn't, she'd beat Ronda in a fight. And then Miesha Tate went out and said that Ronda Rousey was, quote, irrelevant. Yeah, but she was irrelevant enough for you to make a headline off of that comment. So, Ryan, my question to you is, are we seeing more Conor McGregors? You have Amanda Nunes, who's never been particularly loud. Now she's talking about, the baddest bitch on the planet. Miesha Tate, no reason to be talking about Ronda, because she's the champion. And Ronda is, for all intents and purposes, inactive, indefinitely, on the shelf. We have no timeline for her coming back. It was November, but now it's suddenly all those conversations have stopped. But yet these people are still talking about them. It seems to me like these gals are doing the opposite of Thiago Santos, because they're kind of picking a fight with somebody who doesn't want to fight them just so they can siphon their star power. Am I right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I feel like it's kind of seems irresponsible for Miesha Tate. Maybe not irresponsible, but it just, I don't know. It just seems like maybe she used the wrong words like I'm doing now as far as describing Ronda Rousey. Why would you say that? Coming from somebody who has lost to her, how many times?
She's lost twice. Once was the first decision submission, and then
twice.
It was twice. The first time was in Strikeforce. The second time was in UFC. The first time was first round. Second time was third round, which is technically Ronda Rousey's longest fight. So while Holly Holm put a clinic on her,
how can you say that? How can you say that about somebody who has beaten you twice before? I feel like it's I don't know. It was kind of like a low blow on somebody that's already down. You know what I mean?
It was very opportunistic, and I get that she's kind of tried to take the high road with Ronda, especially after the whole Paige Van Zandt thing. I don't think we ever even talked about that on the show. Did we talk about that?
No, the whole thing? No, we didn't. But, that's something we can bring up on the broadcast. It's perfect.
Joe Rogan Experience podcast featured Miesha Tate of the Miesha Tate Show, which fucking, what kind of a name is that, right? Misha Tate Show. How is she ever going to get followers and fans with that name? OTMMA podcast is so much cleverer. But anyway, she was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and she recalled a story wherein Paige Van Sant confided in her and said that because she complimented Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey had come up to her at a press event and called her a fair weather bitch and got in her face and was aggressive. And so now you have Misha Tate, who's like, I'm a champion. I'm a good champion. I'm a nice champion. I give these people the opportunities. I don't cuss out Paige Van Sant, who suddenly Miss Hot fucking thing because she's apparently, per the headlines, in the finals of Dancing with the Stars. We should all be ashamed as MMA fans. That is the breaking news of today. But I digress.
Right.
Like, here's a woman who is angling herself and trying to be this modest, loving champion, but everything she's doing has this undertone of, it's only that you're doing that because you're comparing it to Ronda Rousey. Right. It's not that you're doing these things because, like, at least it's starting to come off as insincere to me. Brian, am I crazy?
No, absolutely not. It's definitely there. I mean, and that's also something that I've always felt like as far as Misha Tate's undertone. I don't know why I've always gotten the vibe that everything she says seems insincere. That's just me.
I largely agree. I mean, she seems fine enough, and I don't just mean her behind, but you know what I'm saying. She very rehearsed, and
right.
I don't know.
Right. And you know what? It was so refreshing having Holly Holm as a champion, albeit for a very brief time, just because everything about her was real. But
even if it wasn't real, it felt real, and I'm okay if it is an authentic replica of sincerity. I will buy it.
Right.
But when it's just something that's kind of a cheap knockoff.
Right. I mean, if I'm sold that it's authentic, hey, I'll roll with it.
Right. Even if it's kayfabe, to coin a term from pro wrestling, which apparently all of our viewers tonight are watching Monday Night Raw. That's the only thing I can conclude. Because I think otherwise we'd be hugely famous and successful if not for the fact that people are watching men covered in oil in their panties slap each other around. But I've been watching a lot of Botchamania. Brian, have you ever watched Botchamania?
Botchamania?
It's Botchamania, like botch, like I screwed up. And so what this guy does, it's adorable, because I used to do these things in like middle school. I'd clip together all the cool stuff that the pro wrestlers did, jumping off the cage that was electrified, and it explodes, and he does a suplexing moonsault. And I'd be like, that's so sick. And I'd make my dad watch it. And my dad would feign interest for all of 2 minutes and then walk away, even though the video wasn't over. But this guy takes the opposite of that stuff, where it's not the good things, but it's all the bad things. And I love it. There's over 300 of them. I love it.
Nice.
Dude, I don't even watch wrestling, but I love watching these things. They're hilarious. And you have guys who just screw up royally. And then you have, I don't know. Just because he not only makes fun of the in-ring elements and stuff, he makes fun of storylines. And, personally, I do have some respect for pro wrestling. It's a live-action stunt show. They work really hard. It's all fun. But you have to, especially when you become an adult male, you kind of have to have a tongue-in-cheek approach of it if you're going to appreciate it at all, right?
Right. Yeah, actually talking about pro wrestling, my brother, he would show me, like, apparently there's like a big resurgence of like Japanese wrestling. I don't know if it's
New Japan Pro Wrestling is huge again.
New Japan Pro Wrestling, exactly. They actually just picked up WWF or WWE picked up like Shinsuke Nakamura.
And they took Mauro Ranallo as soon as he and Josh Barnett started doing the announcing for New Japan. Suddenly, having never shown an interest in Mauro Ranallo despite a 20-year broadcasting career, they're like, yes, we want you to be on our show.
Right. But yeah, looking at some of those old fights, old wrestling matches with Shinsuke Nakamura, like, they're actually really freaking good. Like, they're not like the typical, like, I'm gonna talk for like 20 minutes in dialogue and set up some cheesy move or this or that. Like, it's a full-on like hour of legit wrestling. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think if you want like some really fun matches that are somewhat modern, go back and watch the CM Punk Daniel Bryan Iron Man matches. I know I'm straight edge, whatever. Fuck me. I I never liked CM Punk for being straight edge, so just suck my dick because he totally drinks Pepsi, and I'd rather get a fucking Coca-Cola enema than drink a Pepsi, but whatever. But those are some seriously good matches. Like, you know,
Right.
they remind me of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Macho Man, like that level of good. And if you haven't seen those matches, what are you doing watching our bullshit show? You're already on YouTube. Switch the fucking channel and start Googling that shit.
There we go.
But I feel like we've went on a crazy tangent because, you know, we're talking about stuff that sells. We're talking about Misha Tate selling. We're talking about this. We're talking about hype. What better man in the hype arena than Floyd Money Mayweather? Pretty boy Floyd. How is it? How are we still 2-3 weeks into this and we're still getting headlines about Floyd Mayweather fighting Conor McGregor?
Because it makes money and everybody wants a piece of it. I mean,
But
that's
Brian,
the only thing I could think of.
we have the legal arena and we have recourse. I want you to remember when the Rampage Jackson was supposed to fight for the UFC and Bellator tried to stop him, and then there was that, and then the injunction didn't work. Yeah. But imagine if it was your biggest star going to a competitor. There's no way that happens. It's like, it's so
Right.
bizarre to me. Like, just as a legal premise, I don't see how this could work unless the UFC contract is just a piece of horse shit. But how is it a piece of horse shit if everybody's always complaining that they're bound to it and their soul is, you know,
Right.
steeped in
I mean,
blood and written on the page?
Dana White, I mean, literally, like, right after it made headlines, dismissed it as just complete BS. And you know, it's essentially that's what it is. It's all hogwash. It's all kind of like a what if. I mean, and that's essentially what makes headlines. You know what I mean? There's no substantial evidence to say that one party is you know, 100% going with the other. It's all speculation. Oh yeah, two guys talking and saying, yeah, it would be a good fight, but that means absolutely nothing as far as what's on paper and what's actually going to happen. I don't think it's ever going to happen. So I'm pretty much on your side. I don't think it's, I mean, as far as Conor McGregor being in a contract with the UFC, there's no way he's going to be able to go off and fight, you know, Floyd Mayweather. The only thing I can see is if somehow Conor McGregor were to break contract, I don't know, and fight under his own, what was his whole Conor McGregor fighting?
McGregor Promotions or something like that.
Whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, if there was to do some sort of McGregor promotion / Mayweather
The money team.
thing. Yeah, you know what I mean? I feel like that would be the only way it would happen. But, I mean, it's not going to happen.
Well, it was interesting, too, because Dana White's like, if you want that fight to happen, you call me. I'll make it happen. But that's obviously not what's going to happen because Floyd Mayweather bought himself out of a $1 trillion contract and made his own, you know, the money team and makes an astronomical amount of money. He's not going to make UFC money.
Essentially, it's two giant egomaniacs. Well, three actually, but two with actual worth in Dana White and or Mayweather, basically saying, okay, well, I'm gonna have McGregor come and fight me, but it's only gonna be boxing, right? Whereas Dana White, I'm sure, is gonna be like, okay, well, Mayweather, you think you're the best fighter? Come over here and fight in MMA realm and see what happens. Yeah. So it's like it's very much like a stalemate, and there's not going to be a conclusion because there's too much of this.
You want a proof? Look at Cyborg versus Ronda Rousey. There's no reason why they couldn't have done a 130 or 140 catch weight. There's no reason except for the fact that Dana wanted to set his guy up, his girl up, to be in the best position possible. Same thing with Conor. Look at Randy Couture, James Toney. This is not a new thing.
Right.
Dana White, of all the people James Toney could have fought upon entering the UFC, he picked literally the worst opponent that he could possibly have. And what did Randy do? Slams him down, gets inside mount, and dominates the shit out of him. You really think that, especially on the cusp of potentially selling their company, they're going to make one of their best guys look like shit? No.
Right.
So now, aside from that business, what do you think of him actively trying to recruit Jonathan Jones.
Who's actually recruiting who? Because I haven't heard anything like that.
Yeah, so Floyd Mayweather has said that he's actively trying to engage in business with John Jones, and I think it makes sense, so it makes dollars.
As far as like marketing, as far as like being like a manager or like being on his team, like representing John Jones, like what is this? Like what are you talking about?
Being on the money team, and all the things that entails.
I feel like that's well, okay. I want to say no, just because I like the whole John Jones retribution thing, right? And I feel like John Jones going into the money team is the exact opposite of where he's at now. So I feel like I would want him to be on the up and coming, turn the cheek. I don't know how the fuck you'd say it. Anyways, like, you know what I mean? Like the better John Jones than he was before. You know what I mean? I feel like he is here. Mayweather is way the fuck down here as far as integrity and you know, that is concerned. So I'd like to see John Jones stay up here. And
what about this? I rebut you with this thought that Floyd Mayweather is a piece of human feces with eyeballs.
Right. And he's a known woman abuser. Right. Okay.
He's scum. And yet people tune in to watch him die. And he also capitalizes on a fair amount of people. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this. Just think in your mind and just don't associate any, you know, emotive connotation. Just think of how many times you've seen that TMT logo walking around and compare it to how many times you've seen the UFC logo on a shirt. I've seen more the money team than I've never even once seen a UFC fight kit in person, but I have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of TMT hats, shirts, what have you. And so he's clearly has a following of people who actually like and adore him. And so you have that, plus the people who hate you. John Jones is never going to be a guy who everybody loves. So you can have the fans who love him continue, and the people who hate, like the haters, you profit on both sides. I really think that they have a lot of overlap in ways where there are things that should be irredeemable. The idea of hitting a woman, how is that any different than hitting a woman with your car and running away? I mean, there are certain like logical things that like they are somewhat comparable. At the very least, they're in the same ballpark. So I think that it's actually a pretty decent idea fiscally.
I mean, from a business standpoint, it makes sense. Absolutely. I feel like John Jones could profit off of this. I feel like both of them could profit off this. From a personal fanboy stance on this, I would say I don't like it. But, you know.
That's definitely a good point. I mean, just because it makes sense and it could, you know, possibly make money, there are a lot of things that we don't exploit because it's not substantive enough. So I think I understand your point where you're saying that just as a fan, you don't want to see that, but it's not that you don't think they could do well.
Right, exactly. It's like, don't go down that road.
Yeah, the dark side. Like, sure, the dark side has some appeal to it. You get the force lightning, you can choke some bitches, but you also kind of turn like gray and scaly, and you have testicle veins on your forehead. So yeah, I get you. I smell what you're stepping in. So let's move on from that. We kind of talked about the business side of things. Mighty Mouse Johnson just signed a significant contract extension with the UFC. Now, why do I think that's so interesting? Don't you remember Mr. Demetrius Johnson there saying he wasn't excited or interested in the UFC's Ultimate Fighter, where it's going to be all the flyweights? And suddenly, after signing a significant contract extension, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm all about it. He says, and I quote, it's going to be great competitors. Quote, great competitors. Where did those little bunny-eared freaks come from, Brian? Wasn't he just saying that it didn't get him excited and it was bleh?
What am I doing here?
He's doing, for those of you who are only listening, he's doing the Cheddar makes it better hands.
That's right. That's right. As we were just talking about the TMT, I'm pretty sure Mayweather makes plenty of it. So, yeah, I feel like, I mean, money talks. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's, I mean, but it's not something that it's unjust. You know what I mean? We're talking about legitimately pound for pound best fighter in the UFC. So I'm actually pretty happy about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that he's playing ball, they're playing ball, because the fact is if he's making a concession, it's because they did too. And, I hope that he's getting paid his worth because, damn, he's good.
Right. He's worth a lot. I mean, he's definitely worth more than what they have been paying him. So
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that they've gotten a bargain for him for a while. So hopefully it gets better from here. I do think that that season of The Ultimate Fighter could have really interesting implications. That's why on the podcast I was talking about the idea of if they do a featherweight Ultimate Fighter for the women, having Cyborg, Jermaine Duramine as the coaches, because I really like that kind of situation where you have the coaches who could inevitably fight the competitors. I think it's happened 5 times in the UFC. For example, BJ Penn is going to be fighting Cole Miller. Cole Miller was on Team Pulver back when BJ Penn coached against Jens Pulver. So that's kind of a built-in intrigue that I think is underrated. I mean, dude, don't you wish that Matt Hughes and Rashad Evans were in the same weight class? Could you imagine? Like, he tormented that dude for weeks in that house. That's awesome. I mean, that would have been such a fun hype to exploit. So I think that going to that, looking at this potential of Joseph Benavidez, Henry Cejudo fighting these guys, I mean, that could be pretty cool.
Agreed. Absolutely. It's something that I don't know. I mean, it would definitely bring me back to The Ultimate Fighter as far as watching it. It seems like it's just dropped off significantly every single season. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's just nothing to it. But I kind of liked how we were talking about earlier with kind of like bringing Invicta fighters over into the UFC as far as The Ultimate Fighter, or not necessarily even just bringing Invicta fighters in, but just talking about Invicta in general. And that's essentially, marketing both. So
and you make them credible, because one thing I always find myself doing when I'm watching The Ultimate Fighter, I'm like, who the fuck are you?
Right.
I'm so fucking busy. I don't have time to watch Joe Schmo who he fixes tires, then on the side is a fighter.
Right.
Why don't I watch a professional fighter? There's so many companies I could watch a professional fighter in.
Right. Who are you established with? Like, there has to be some sort of establishment tied to you for me to be able to be like, oh, okay, he was in so-and-so, or they were in so-and-so. Okay, I can actually look up a record and go from there.
Absolutely. So we're talking about Demetrious Johnson.
Right.
Absolutely a future Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Unless his career, unless he went on a 9-fight losing streak from now, I think he's definitely a UFC Hall of Fame person.
Absolutely.
So this week it was announced that Big Nog, the opposite of Lil Nog, is going to be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. Now, Big Nog is a former Pride heavyweight champion and a former UFC interim heavyweight champion. Now, Brian, I want to ask you this question. Is Lil Nog of the stature to where he should be in the Hall of Fame as well?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Everybody always lumps them together, and it's like
they're two completely separate people. They share the same last name. That's about it. I don't think so. Big Nog has essentially always been the front runner of the two. You know what I mean? It's like there's going to be Big Nog and all of his accomplishments, and then there's the Little Nog. I get it that people lump them together because of the name, but that's where it ends.
I agree. He's never fought for a title. He's never had a title. He got to the quarterfinals, I think, of a Pride tournament, and that's it. I mean, sure.
Right. Essentially, it's like lumping together Little Emelianenko with Fedor.
Oh yeah, Alexander Emelianenko, the crazy rapist guy, and his amazing brother. Like, obviously, Lil Nog is not to that extent, but I mean, it's kind of silly when people just go, "Oh, well, they're related; they have to be good." Look at that kid from World Series of Fighting, Ben Fodor, the guy who's Phoenix Jones, the superhero. Well, they're making this whole thing where he's fighting his brother Karos Fodor, and that's like Civil War or whatever, trying to squeeze that little comic book reference out. And it's interesting to me because one has a decent MMA record, one doesn't at all. And it's just like, I don't know. maybe it's because I don't have blood brothers. Is that why? Or does this even appeal to you too? Like where you think like, oh, just the hierarchy of family, Little Nog has to be relevant, and this guy has to be a credible opponent.
Oh no, I don't buy it. I'm not buying it. I have multiple siblings. My older brother wrestled above me, and we're two completely different style of wrestlers. And I don't feel like we're lumped together at all. Albeit Kyle was a lot better a wrestler than I was. But yeah, I mean, I would actually personally, for me, take offense to people lumping me with Kyle. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, I'm my own wrestler. You know what I mean? I feel like I don't know. I don't feel it, but at the same time, I don't feel like Little Nog is trying to like ride the coattail. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Do you think he ever had a conversation like Joe Lozon did with his brother, or was it Joe Lozon with his brother? Or was it Jim Miller and Dan Miller? I think it might have been Joe Lozon and his brother, where he pulled him aside and said, "Hey man, if you want to do this, stop fucking up. Dedicate yourself to your full-time fucking job." Because
Right.
it was affecting his credibility. And it's like, especially the Nogueiras, they made a career together. They were both coaches. They were both, that Minotauro team. I mean, how many guys have you seen with that tattoo?
One thing that's different about like the Little Nog and Big Nog situation is, we're coming from like all of the United States in a completely different era than where Little Nog and the Big Nogs grew up and or trained, right? So Brazil, in comparison to the United States as a whole, as far as how many fighters are here, right? The Big Nog and Little Nog are a huge name. That's something that's going to stay with Brazil forever as far as mixed martial arts. You know what I mean? It's something that's very different than what we are looking at over here. So it's kind of hard to kind of gauge the like emphasis on the name itself, and you don't want to say like, okay, let's lump them together because they both have the name, but in fact that's the emphasis that's so big as far as who they are, right? In Brazil, they are essentially like gods, you know what I mean? So it's like, I do understand, whereas if the UFC were to bring both of them into the Hall of Fame, I don't agree with it, but I feel like a lot of people would probably be happy about it.
One of our fans online, Sammy Eid, MVP fan of the year, just pointed to my attention that Clay Guida has a brother, Jason Guida, and Jason kind of sucks. But I never even knew that Jason Guida existed until this comment on this YouTube video right now. And I am MMA obsessed. So that just kind of exemplifies what we're talking about. And, Brian, let me ask you this, because they both had equal opportunities, right? When it comes to relevance, they both start at the same time. They're in the same demographic, all these things. But let's look at their competition. Heavyweight has notoriously been a shallower division than divisions such as light heavyweight. Is that a factor into why Lil Nog isn't as big as the other?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's something. Goddamn, I didn't even think about it, but yeah, I mean the amount of competition for Little Nog is definitely a little bit deeper than Big Nog. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. At the end of the day, I don't think he's gonna be relevant enough to become UFC Hall of Fame status, but he's definitely gonna be up there with I don't know what Brazil has as far as MMA fighters are concerned, but he's gonna be up there. You know what I mean?
Okay, we need to have a serious talk right now, because this Jason Guida guy has one of my favorite records I've ever seen. He fought Jeff Munson, and he is 5'10", so that's not that far. But he's 19-28, and I'm looking at his record right now. 1, 2, 11. So he's 11-2, or no, 2-11 in his last 13. Wow, bro.
Where is he fighting?
He last fought in Bellator 2 years ago. My mind is just blown right now. How does Clay Guida not smother his brother in his sleep with a record like this? Like, you bring dishonor to our name. Obviously, I'm kidding, but that's just startling. And it makes Lil Nog look a hell of a lot better by comparison. And he's clearly not riding his brother's coattails or anything like that. But it doesn't seem like Jason Guida did either to an extent, because he fought in obscure promotions. Maybe he, I hate to say it, guys. I come back to sex a lot on this show. I say as I'm scratching my balls right now underneath the camera. But maybe he's a masochist. And let me tell you, dominatrixes don't come cheap.
It's
so
true.
This is a great way of circumventing that.
Kendra just
Keeping your
giggled
overhead
right
down.
now in the other room.
So speaking of horribly maiming ourselves, let's look to George Roop. Brian, did you see former UFC fighter George Roop shatter his goddamn leg on Yoon Jun Lee's elbow?
Yeah, I did see that, and I gotta tell you, it brings back some nasty memories of some other nasty leg breaks.
Like Corey Hill and Anderson Silva and Tyrone Spong. Like, it was bizarre. He was throwing a front kick to the body. Yoon Ju Lu Hu uses his elbow, and I don't know if he even intentionally did it. And then
it literally wraps around his elbow.
it's gross. It's super gross. And if you go over to our friends at MMAmania.com, they have pictures of the x-rays because fuck privacy, right?
I was gonna say, isn't that like some sort of illegal?
Well, I think that he released it because otherwise that's a HIPAA violation, which, well, I don't know, because he was in Road FC, so he might have been in Korea when the fight happened. So maybe they're like, oh yeah, fuck your privacy, you're here.
Hey,
so
you got $500, here's some x-rays.
yeah, right. Could you imagine x-rays, read all about it instead of extra people?
I got it. It was good.
Okay, thank you. I've been dating myself a lot by, being all into World War II history lately. The UFC hasn't had enough of the extra, peripheral things to keep my attention. It's just been fights. There have been less Conor McGregors and whatnot to entertain me. One thing I think as we wrap up the show that I really wanted to talk about was, we're going to get to the fan questions. Calm your tits. But first, I want to talk about Jordan Parsons. Bellator, after stripping Vitaly Minakov of the heavyweight title and letting Will Brooks out of his contract, now Chandler is going to be fighting Pitbull for the vacant lightweight title, which, don't worry, Brian, we're going to talk about it. Calm your tits. They came up with the Jordan Parsons Scholarship Fund. And, Brian, this feels very earnest to me. It took them a couple weeks to come up with it. They did it. They didn't campaign about it in a crazy way. They didn't advertise all over Spike. It seems earnest. Am I right? Or do you suspect that this is kind of not necessarily exploitative, but opportunistic?
No, I feel like it's earnest. I don't know. I'm all for it. I like these kind of things. It's refreshing. You know what I mean?
So then I guess you would support the Dada 5000 Pitbull Scholarship Fund, right? Where you send a Pitbull off to some kind of collegiate program so they can get their wrestling experience. And then, fuck me. I don't know why I said that. Dogfight, I think, the stupid documentary. But to my point, I think that's awesome. And I'm really happy to hear about that from Bellator. So Bellator, I want you to know that I am going to not only watch, but cover your next 3 cards, guaranteed.
Wow, you hear that? That was a pledge, guys. That was a pledge.
Which I don't do. So as far as Chandler versus Pitbull, that's a pretty fucking dope-ass fight. So you lose a guy who hates his job and hates everything about you, and then you get a fight that's super awesome and exciting. And I don't see where Bellator loses out on this. Do you?
No, absolutely not. This is something that I'll be definitely tuning in for. You know what I mean? It's something that shit. As far as Bellator fights, I think Davis King Mo is pretty much what kind of grabbed my attention, but this one is right there with it.
Yeah, and I mean, Will Brooks is a guy who beat Michael Chandler twice and made your golden boy look like shit, and now he kind of gets a title shot. Like, you can tell who their favorites are, because even when Michael Chandler, I think, went, if you look at the time, it's over like it's almost like a 2-year span. Yeah, it was almost exactly 2 years. No, wait, my math's off. Yeah, no, it's over 2 years. Thank you. My brain totally does work. Fucking sweet. Actually, it's a year, but whatever. He went a long time without a win, is my point. And they still loved him. He was still on all their damn Dave & Buster's commercials and all that nonsense. So they win in every capacity, because either Patricky wins and he's homegrown, or Michael Chandler wins and he's homegrown, and both of them are loyal to the company, and both of them love the company, and both of them, I think, have quite a bit longer on their contracts. So it seems like they get off everywhere. And then with Vitaly Minakov, they keep him under contract. They just stripped him for inactivity, so they don't have to risk losing him anywhere, but they get to say, hey, fuck you. We're not going to succumb to your games and your strategy or whatnot. If you're not going to defend your title since April of 2014, you're not going to be champion. Bada bing, bada boom. And now you open up the title potential for King Mo, who said he would fight at heavyweight and has just lost at light heavy. He has a lot of losses at light heavy, and it'd be very hard to rebuild him at light heavy. He could just go straight into a heavyweight title shot.
Why not?
So there's that. And on the topic of title shots, we have a fan question, which is Bisping, Jacare, Yoel, who should get the next title shot? Will Bisping ever get a title shot, or just hope to replace an injured title contender? That is probably the only way he gets a title shot. I shit you not.
Right.
He comes in last second.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like Jacare is definitely up there. He should be. We talked about this in the podcast. I believe he's the #1 front runner for a title shot. If, God forbid, he were to become injured, I definitely feel like Bisping would definitely be in discussion.
Well, especially if Rockhold wins. There are only so many guys that have that extra oomph when it comes to Rockhold. Rockhold's a new champion, but I mean, he hasn't. He's not super popular. Then again, neither was Weidman at the point of like being astronomically popular. A good way to get him up there would be, hey, I beat you, but you headbutted me, and now I'm going to talk shit, and I'm in XXX, whatever, Reloaded, or whatever the new Michael Bisping XXX movie is going to be. So he's going to be writing on that. I think that that's really that kind of crest is his best opportunity to be able to get a title shot. After that, no. And so all people, like to my point, Thiago Santos, dude, he's right there at a title shot after being in the UFC for over a decade. Shut the front door. So with that, I think that all of our other fan questions have kind of been answered in one way or another. So, Brian, do you have any closing remarks?
No, other than I feel like we did a good one. And peace out, motherfuckers.
So for Brian, I am still Jake, and we are, say it with me, Brian, overworked, underpaid, and out of time.
Or not. What? I didn't get the memo.
I've been saying it. That was the test, because I know you didn't watch the episodes when you weren't on, because I announced it and it was very cheesy.
We are Overtime MMA podcast. No,
nope. We are overworked. We are underpaid. We are out of time.
Yeah, we failed that one. My bad.